everyone, my name is Heather. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all good and having a great start to your new year. Today I'm going to be working on creating a journal for myself. This is going to be my first journal of this year, and I am probably going to break this up into two parts. The first part, which is this video, I'm going to show how I created the journal and just assembling it and getting it all put together. And then in the second video, I am going to talk a little bit about my intentions for this journal and how I'd like to use it. So so I'm just showing you here all the different papers that I have pulled out that I want to use for the signature. I have a lot of these leftover pages that I had just waiting for other journal signatures and just different printables. I'm going to be using quite a few printables in the signatures, and not a whole lot of tea stained papers. Usually I put a lot of tea stained papers in my signature, but in this journal, I'm just going to be using these papers that I had on hand. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the book covers with various papers. I'm not going to cover the front because obviously I love that, but I'm going to cover the plain sides like the back. I love this sort of golden brown floral print, and I think it would be a really nice match to that front cover. So that'll be the back, and then the other papers will go on the insides. So this floral image is one of my favorites from my printables, and I had printed it onto these fabric sheets that I ordered from Amazon, these printable fabric sheets. I'll make sure I link those below so that you can see if you have any interest in those. But basically they're just like fabric pieces of paper that you put through your printer, and they work really nice. So anyways, I wanted to use that as my cover, but I also really liked the book cover, so I decided to use it on the inside cover here. So I'm also adding a little pocket to the bottom with just an old book page. I know that that is probably not very sturdy, but since this is just my journal, I am not too concerned about it. So I'm just adding like a tiny little pocket on the bottom. I'm just cutting up these different book pages and collaging them onto the back inside cover. So for this next part, I'm going to be joining the front and back covers together with that piece of fabric, but don't get too attached to that fabric because I end up covering that up in the end. I know it's so pretty. I really, really love that little piece, but it just didn't work for me in the end. I wanted something a little different. So yeah, and honestly, that is so common with everything that I make, and maybe for you guys too. I end up like putting things down and then I rip it off and try something different. That happens to me a lot in my creative process, which is sometimes why I have a hard time making videos, because if I do something and then I want to change it, like it becomes more complicated. So I figured I'd just show you. I put that fabric down, but then later I changed my mind. So I'm just showing you here how I left the fabric a little bit longer and a little higher on the spine so that I could cut them at a little bit of an angle and then fray the fabric a little. I like that imperfect look to the fabric on the spine. So I'm just taking a piece of this linen fabric here and I'm gonna cut it to size, and I'm gonna do a hidden binding. So basically that just means that I'm gonna take and bind the signature onto that white piece of fabric, and then I'm gonna glue it in, and then the outside fabric that's on the outside of the journal is gonna cover up the binding so you won't be able to see it. So now I'm just starting the process of choosing the papers that I want to use for the signature, and I'm using the journal itself as my pattern. I'm sort of folding them and fitting them in there just to see the sizes of the different papers. And I'm using the pile of papers to the left. I'm going to be using a lot of really printed papers, a lot of color, a lot of just really pretty papers that I love and make me happy. Usually whenever I make a journal, I do use a lot of tea stain papers in the journals, but in this particular one, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not too worried about all the patterns that are going to be in there because I'm just going to creatively work around them. I do plan to write a lot in this journal, so I'll just use a lot of pockets, a lot of tuck spots, and different creative ways to work with all the beautiful, patterns that are going in the journal. So whenever I started this journal, I had already had quite a few papers that I showed you in the beginning that were already folded. I had already thought about using them in other journals or other signatures. So I'm using a lot of those, but I also did go and print a lot of papers that just spoke to me. I went through my printables and just printed a bunch of my favorites and things that I thought would go well in the journal. And I did give thought to printing on the back of the papers as well, so that way whenever I folded the paper and put it in the signature, the stark white background wouldn't really be there. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind the white background sometimes, but I just did that extra step with this journal to just kind of have a lot of pattern and a lot of different play on the different papers. I think one of the beautiful things about using printables in our journals is the fact that you can take them and just print them over and over and use these really beautiful patterns in your journals. Like, I love the fact that they're just not precious and you can still have the beauty of them, but write and use them, and if you make a mistake, you print it again. And I love that concept because sometimes I don't really like having a lot of really precious papers in my journals that I'm going to write in, that I'm going to create in, that I'm going to draw in. I don't like it because then I feel like I don't want to use the journal because they're too precious. So I think there's all different kinds of journals. There's art journals that you just admire for the art that's in them. You don't really use them as writing journals. You know, in those journals, I tend to really love like the more precious papers. But for my creative journals, like this one is going to be, I really just love using the beautiful patterns of the printables. So this video, I'm just going to show how I created the journal and put it all together. And then in the next video, I'm going to talk a lot about how I plan to use the journal and maybe work on a couple pages in there with you guys. So basically, I'll just tell you quickly, but I want to talk about it more in the next video. But I want to use this journal as almost like a vision board or an inspiration board of some kind, like where I'm going to fill the journal with a lot of things that just really lift my soul, like lift me up. And I want to put all of that into the journal. Like I want to set intentions for my goals and things that I would like to do with my life this year, things that are important to me. And I want to put all of that into the journal and just kind of use it as a really positive place to share my thoughts and get my goals in order, and you know, all of that kind of thing. So look for that in the next video. I'm not exactly sure when I'll have that done, but hopefully soon. And if you guys are inspired by that idea, maybe you want to create your own journal and do the same. That would be a lot of fun. So yeah, so look for that, and I'm excited to share some of my thoughts with all of you. So I'm spending quite a bit of time, you know, gathering the papers and folding them and putting them together. Sometimes it's a little bit of a long process in choosing your papers and choosing your pages and like making them flow inside of the journal. I love to layer them in, like making some shorter, some bigger, some smaller, you know, just typical junk journal format. So when I was talking about how much I love using the printables for my journal signature, I also really love adding just a few vintage papers in there, like those old book pages and that vintage sheet music. Just a few added in adds such a difference. I think it makes such a really nice vintage vibe, and it really looks so pretty with all of the printed papers. So now I'm going to be adding this really pretty piece of fabric that I got from Virginia. Thanks, Virginia. I'm going to be adding just cutting it to size, like almost like a page, and just adding it. I love the texture. I love the see-through, the color, and the polka dots. So now I'm just pretty much done with my signature, and I'm flipping through all the papers. I love how it all came together. I love all the color and the patterns and the florals. It's just so pretty to me and very inspiring and making me want to journal in this journal. This paper here, this center spread, is actually a piece of vintage wallpaper. It's one of my favorite prints. I do have a printable of that, so I'll make sure I link that in the description box if you want to know where that is. But yeah, it's so pretty. I love that one. So I just take those clips and clip the edges before I get ready to bind it into the journal. And then I take my awl tool, and I'm just going to be doing a ribbon binding, which if you've watched any of my other journal videos, I show how I do that a lot. I just basically put 2 holes in the signature, and then I thread a thin piece of silk ribbon through the holes, and I'm going to be binding it to that white piece of linen fabric. I just take my awl tool and use the pointy edge to push the ribbon through the holes. And then what I'm gonna do is take this piece of linen fabric. Now, this is just me doing things like, I do a lot of things like I just eyeball them. So you can be a little bit more meticulous and like clip that down and make sure everything's really even. But basically I just use my judgment and I line it up with the signature and then just put a hole there where the holes are poked into the signature. So that way I know where to thread the ribbon through on the fabric. So then I just push the silk ribbon through the hole of that white fabric, and then I'm gonna thread it to the second hole and bring it up through there and then back through the signature to the center page. And then once you have it through the signature, you just tie a bow and you're good. And then I just take and smooth all that out, and I'm going to get ready to glue that into the book. The first thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to take a piece of this brown paper packaging, and I'm just going to cut a piece of that and put it behind that white fabric just to give a little bit more of a sturdy base for the signature to attach to. So now I just glue all of those pieces together. The brown paper I glued to that front fabric that's on the outside of the spine, and then this one I'm gluing to the brown paper. So just sandwiching all of that together. So I just took my clips off, and now I'm just sort of cutting off any of that excess brown paper that was there and just making sure everything is laying nice and even. So now it's all together, and like I said, I end up covering up that blue fabric on the outside spine, but because I glued it to the brown paper, I couldn't really take that apart. So now I'm adding this clip to the back of the back cover. I'm gonna make it kind of like a clipboard, and that is from Tim Holtz. And then I'm also gonna attach some of these little charms to that little clip. I love that. So this is the part where I'm gonna change the fabric on the outside of the journal. I'm adding a little piece of tulle at the top of that clip just to give a little bit more interest up there. And I worked on this over the course of like a couple days. So after thinking about it, I decided I wanted to add that pink trim to the side. I think it'll look so pretty. And I'm adding a piece of sari trim to the inside of each of those, like the edges of that white fabric. So that's what I'm doing now. So now I'm just gonna add this gorgeous piece of pink fabric, this beaded trim, to the spine of the journal. And I love how it goes with that brown book cover, just that golden brown and that pink together. I really love that. And part of what I really wanted to do with this journal is make it really colorful, but in my way, you know? And I love that, just that bright pink is so pretty to me. And I've been using my Fabri-Tac glue for everything in this journal, and you have to be careful, especially when you're gluing silk onto anything, because it can easily soak through and cause like a stain. So I just smoothed that glue out with my fingers and try to really go slow with adding it so that I don't end up doing that. I think it turned out so beautiful. I love that trim, and I'm really happy with the cover and how just like the pop of pink really makes me happy. So for this last step, I'm going to be adding this necklace to the closure. So I created this necklace a long time ago, and it's missing one of the rhinestones in that cameo center. So I decided that I'm just going to use it for my journal because I love it. I think it's beautiful. I want to add it to this particular journal because I'm trying to fill it with so many things that make me happy. And because I created that necklace, you know, I'm probably not going to wear it because it's missing that rhinestone. So I'm not damaging the necklace. I'm just going to tie the sari trim to the ends and then wrap it around the journal. So if I ever want to wear it, I certainly could, or I could replace that rhinestone. But for now, I'm just going to add it to my journal because I love it so much. And it's kind of like it's a part of me because I had created that in the past. So now the journal is all finished and I love how it turned out. I'm really looking forward to working in this journal. Love that closure. So I hope you enjoyed watching my process of putting it all together, and I will be back with another video where I talk more about how I plan to fill up this journal. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.